From Trimble Construction, you're listening to the Connected Construction Show, where we connect you to the contractors, owners, designers, engineers, and construction professionals who are finding better ways to work. And now, here's your host, Matt Sprague.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Connected Construction Show. I am your host, Matt Sprague. We are excited to be back for yet another episode. Today we have with us Bryan Bernardo, who is the Regional Global Practice Manager for Construction at Burns McDonnell. Bryan, welcome very much to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Great to be here.
So as always, and any of our normal listeners to the show, we get right into it. I want to get into a point where we get to know you a little bit. And then we're going to get into kind of the at least the starting theme of the show, which would be around modular prefabrication, history of it, where it's going in the future. I don't always promise that we stay on topic. Sometimes we go a little bit off the rails for fun, wherever it may go. But as always, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Personally as well as professionally, and on the professional side, how did you get to be where you are today? What was your journey like?
All right, sure. So I grew up with grandfathers on both sides. I'm from a construction family, I guess you'd call it. Grandfathers on both sides were in construction. My father was in construction. And then as I was finishing up high school and you make those decisions of what you're going to do in college, I was like, wow, I can get a degree in construction. This is a perfect fit for me. I've, been on job sites from a very young age and really enjoyed seeing the construction process. So I went to University of Florida through the construction management program at the Rinker School of Building Construction. And then been in the business for 35 years. Started in Florida, and then made my way west to Phoenix.
That's awesome. So, as I mentioned before, kind of the theme of this conversation is around modular prefabrication. So, talk to us a bit about the technological advances that has got us to where we are today in prefabrication.
Yeah, I think so. I'd back up and say, prefabrication, modular construction, not necessarily a brand new thing. It's been around, but really, to your question, the trigger that really helped move it forward was building information modeling, or BIM. It just brings more predictability into the design and the construction process. So I think that was the biggest. Personally, it's been about 10 years ago or so. Once we saw the precision that we could get to in the BIM model and coordinate that with prefabricated components, that was really the piece that, before you were, trying to look at 2D drawings that were probably reproduced, and the accuracy, you might be using a magnifying glass to figure out where does that dimension line go to? Is it the middle of the wall? Is it the inside, outside? Not really sure. And when you're trying to prefab things, if it gets to the job site and it doesn't fit, then that's a problem that creates rework.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the additional advances that have come along, the use of AR and VR have really helped with that as well. Combining BIM with those type of things. The example that I actually believe this was an example that was that came across during the construction of our corporate headquarters in Westminster, Colorado. That we were leveraging our own technology, and I think that someone was wearing an augmented reality headset and was able to see a clash between I think some steel reinforcements that were in, and the in prefabrication, I think HVAC system, and they're like, oh, well, that's not supposed to be there, and it was able to kind of then quickly change the model and adjust the prefabrication so there wasn't a massive delay upon delivery.
Correct. Yeah.
So are there other, talk to me about any type of examples that you've come across with projects that have gone really well that you'd like to kind of highlight in terms of the prefabrication side.
Yeah. So I would start with, probably the simplest would be like a barcode or QR codes. So that, as you're prefabricating components, those can be tagged and then scanned once they get to the job site and identified as to location and whatnot. So that was probably the early. I think, as you just mentioned, the augmented reality lenses, I think, are still an emerging, technology. I think that is going to have huge application going forward. And then I would probably see, the use of geospatial data to go along with that. So, you can maybe dream a little bit and say that in the future, whether it's, large or small component comes on site, you would automatically, as you're looking through the lens, kind of understand where it goes. And as you're transporting it, it would be almost like, the mapping software we all use in our vehicles. It would guide you to here's, maybe even as far as here's the best route to get it to where it needs to go, and then even positioning. So things like traditional layout may not be as important because of geospatial location-based technologies. So I think with that then comes reliable connectivity. Has to be consistent, reliable connectivity on job sites, which has definitely been a focus over the last few years, as more and more reliance on technology. Although there is some challenges with it when you have very heavy steel structures or concrete structures, or you might be underground parking garages, can still be a challenge. So it might be a little bit of a limiting factor, but I'm sure we'll figure that out too.
So we have all of these advances that are happening, right? You said that, because even, the idea of barcodes from a description to the barcode popping up on a phone in terms of the model, or even onto a headset that allows you to visualize where it is. So there's all these varying levels of advances, right? So how do you see those advances and other advances, impacting the industry?
I see it transforming the industry. I see, so we've traditionally, construction really hasn't changed for hundreds of years. We've been, gatherers of materials delivered to a job site, cut to fit and placed. And I see us really changing into more of a manufacturing, more of an assembly line approach. So I think, again, you're going to have some challenges, like I mentioned, with the connectivity, but I really see it more transforming the industry. The old adage of what got us here is not going to get us there. We have to figure out, for a variety of reasons, ways to be more efficient, execute quicker, execute more reliably, from a schedule standpoint, et cetera.
So the hot button topic that pops up all the time is labor shortages. So, and the conflicting conversation between technology helping to address labor shortages versus technology taking away jobs. What's the like the juxtaposition on that side? Like, where do you stand in terms of technology, and how prefabrication will help address maybe from both perspectives?
Yeah, so I don't think it's any secret the labor challenges that the industry is facing, and then I'd say, oh, by the way, for some, the construction sites are where they want to be, and for others, maybe not so much. Um, so I think a couple of things. I think what the industry is seeing is that candidates prefer to be in a warehouse or a manufacturing facility that is, climate controlled, maybe not air conditioned, but more climate controlled than a job site may be, that's well lit, that you're performing your task, at an ergonomic kind of level. You're not having to put yourself in awkward position. You're not having to work at height. So I think all those are positive. I think that's a positive, that you can maybe attract and you're not running all over a city or a state. That's the other thing is, some people, depending on where their project is, it might be a tremendous commute for them. So having consistency about where I go to work, consistency about the environment I'm working in, I think is a positive for offsite, whether it's modular or prefab. And then I think that there's all the other elements that I've touched on. We're going to see safety increases, productivity increases, quality increases, all those sorts of things, as opposed to trying to get people to the job sites.
Yeah, I would imagine that too in terms of remote job sites, right? The less need to have people out there, the better.
Right.
The more remote, the more difficult, the higher the cost. So with prefabrication, that would make a massive impact. So we kind of went and talked about prefab, and we talked about some of the technological advances and whatnot. I'd love to hear a project or two that you've participated in with prefabrication, just to kind of highlight like the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. So are there any examples of projects that you've been a part of that have really been successful?
Yeah, a couple. I guess I'll start with the most successful, and it happened to be a healthcare project, and it's probably 6-7 years ago. And what we did on that project is prefabricated exterior wall panels, pre-finished exterior wall panels, framed, load-bearing wall panels. And then on the inside, the bathroom pod units were prefabricated and delivered as completed units. And then the head walls in all the patient rooms. So patient head walls are, one of those, very intensive from an electrical med gas perspective. And so did all those offsite. The result of all those efforts saved the client from the initial GMP budget that was put together about $3 million, and saved about 3.5 months on schedule.
Wow. So that would be, so I'm thinking of like those areas that it saves, right? So especially the head walls, I would imagine that normally, that would be the wall gets framed, and then you have to bring in specialty subcontractors that are electrical and gas, certified, that cost quite a bit of money. So now you're doing the majority of that in-wall work ahead of time, where there's economies of scale within manufacturing, and then it's just about bringing those specialty subcontractors in for the connections from the rest of the hospital.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. So the metal wall framing subcontractor was in the warehouse manufacturing facility. Literally, they stood up the floors almost like, the walls almost like dominoes. And so they framed the head wall sections. They were stood up like dominoes, and then electrician would make a pass, do all of their rough ends, run all their conduit, and med gas would follow. And you do that after you've kind of debugged it. You've worked out templates, so everything's more of a templated. There's not a lot of measuring. It's like, well, we know these head walls are all the same size. Here's the template goes on. Here's where the electrical box goes. Here's where the oxygen gets roughed in. So it's really about spending more time up front, pre-planning, and then lining up the people to execute the work. And then you're completing, that in your manufacturing setting, loading it on a truck, shipping it to the job site.
So is the manufacturing setting currently, is it all, I'm trying to frame this idea in my head before I even say it. Is it all this, like the same employees of a singular company, or is it still subcontractors being brought in? And if it is subcontractors being brought in, is the idea moving forward that it becomes a singular manufacturing company that has all of these assets available to, or human assets available to them?
Yeah. My experience, and I think where most of the industry is right now, is they are the subcontractors. I think the advantage to that is that they can do certain portions, like we talked about the head walls, but they're also the framer for the rest of the building. So they might have a crew that comes to the warehouse to work on the head walls, but they're also still working on the job site. They're also the ones to receive and place the head wall. So it's been more of a subcontractor. You have those conversations with them up front. Here's what we're thinking. Are you bought into this approach? If so, then some of your crew would report to the warehouse while we're doing this component. Now, I think there was a big name out there that is fallen on hard times, that was trying to do, as you said, do everything in-house. That's a very different model, and might have been a great idea, bad timing. I don't know, but we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I think that was a great experience or experiment into, hey, we envision it could go this way. Can we do this? And so, yeah, I think there's room down the road for probably somebody to try that. Maybe a little, learn from, lessons learned on that approach, the initial approach.
Yeah, I would imagine that it would probably work on things that are repeatable, right? So if there was a prefabrication residential company that are just pumping out the same things over and over again, then they can train people up. But on something like projects that you're working on that are all custom, right? They're not all the same. It does make sense to have continuity between those that are helping planning and design, the construction in the manufacturing side, and then the assembly, if you will, and having continuity across there to continue to have the efficiencies across. So that makes sense.
Right. And I would.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt you there. I was going to say, so, there's a lot of scalability to what you can do on the prefabrication side. So it may be as simple as pipe racks that are done, and it can be ductwork, prefabricated ductwork, assembled. Electricians refer to it as a kit in the box. So here's everything you need to rough in this room, and that would be, the conduit is cut to length already. Everything, every piece they need to execute is there, as opposed to them having to cut it on site, run around and find couplings and screws and whatnot. So that's, I think can apply to just about any project. You just have to look for what can we do that will help, to speed us up, to be more, productive, more efficient. And then you take it to the other end where there's larger components of the building heads towards that modular construction that are really fully done. But I think you're right that high repeatability is a key. Like bathroom pods. You think about settings like patient rooms in healthcare, dormitories, apartments, those sorts of facilities where, okay, the bathroom is pretty much the same. You might have a left-right difference, but you have a lot of quantity. So then that makes sense. Same with exterior wall panels. Okay, we've got a lot of exterior wall surface. They're all about the same. If your building's kind of a square or a rectangle, then that even makes it that much more applicable.
All right, so we are on time for our hot take question. All right, so we try to look at kind of current events and things like that to try to get your perception on things. So the goodness gracious, the International Code Council and Modular Building Institute, they recently launched a U.S. national initiative to develop standards for offsite construction. So given, I guess I'm going to paint with a broad stroke here, given the general distaste for regulation in the construction industry and the patchwork nature of local and state and federal regulations, what do you think about this effort?
So I think it's an important step. I think what the challenge has been is that, let's say we're being creative on the design and construction side, and we want to prefab some components or do some modular construction. And modular, a lot of times you might have finishes applied. So now you think about the inspection process, depending on where we were, what municipality, what state, who we were working for, any oversight there might be into the construction process, that was really step number one. You had to figure that out, because sometimes the answer was, okay, we can build these, we can pre-finish the inside, but we have to leave the backside exposed so that they can inspect it in the field. Because there were some municipalities that say, no, we inspect in the field. That's the only place we'll go. We were like, you can come to our manufacturing site and inspect there. No, we don't do that. And others would be like, oh, okay, sure, that's great. So I think it is an important step in educating, building inspector, code officials, and I hope over time it really almost introduces a new section into the building code that says, okay, if you're doing some of these, prefabrication, modularization techniques, then here's how. And even you think about how drawings are put together, we typically, from a design perspective, you're showing a floor plan, you're showing how it gets roughed in, more on a floor plan setting, or you break it down into smaller components. And now it's kind of like, and that's how they want to inspect it. So now it's like, no, you got to inspect this piece. We're going to do, to fill up this floor plan, we're going to do 50 pipe racks, for example, and those are going to get fabbed off site. You can pressure test them and inspect them off site. They're going to come on site. Then we're going to connect these 50 pieces together to run the length of the floor, and we'll pressure test again. But it's just a little different. You might even show. I'm not aware of any prefabricated components showing up on, call it the records of documents of record at this point, but we could go in that direction.
Interesting. Bryan, thank you so much for your time today, for your insights into prefabrication. It's been really an educational opportunity for me. So I think thank you so much, and I think our listeners and our viewers are going to feel the same way. So thank you very much for joining us today.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on the show, Matt. Appreciate the opportunity.
And everybody who's listening and watching, thank you very much for tuning in. And until next time, stay connected.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Connected Construction Show. For more information, visit us at connectedconstructionshow.com.